Today we get together with people who has this sense of community, who wants to get together, to share something, and to enjoy. Unfortunately, we have less and less people who has this sense of community. I am very obliged to you. And today is we are wrapping up with our intergenerational program. I want to say thank you to our students, to everyone who participated in this program. It was a great program, So many people this year participated. Thank you. And I want to say a huge thank you to your inspirational,
talented, very nice human being.
Who inspire your creativity. Please, people, keep moving on into the right direction. Please.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madeline. Thank you for your hard working.
She baked a cake, and
Wow.
she's a great baker.
Yeah.
So I recommend. And we have an ice cream cake.
It goes with ice cream cake.
La mode.
For ice cream. Yeah. Just enjoy.
Thank you.
Is the Mercedes and
Wait a minute.
right?
Everybody who participated, because, not every group is like your group, was amazing, very giving and cooperative, because, I mean, I expect people to be cooperative, but what I mean is some people, like even I could use Gail as an example, that she said, I don't have a book to write, I don't have anything to write, and then once she started writing, she couldn't stop, and especially Rita couldn't stop. I don't think we can hear her whole book today, but it's so moving. And then when we started listening to books, we found out that Rita and Linda both had mothers who thought they couldn't have children, and then it was very moving to hear that they were born and now are here. And so I really appreciate my King's Row students, because they had so many classes this term, and they made time to come here, and not only that, they shared so much, and it was, and you know what, the best thing was today I got text messages that said, if you're doing it again next year, we want to come, and made me feel very good, so thank you.
And we want to host them.
Yeah.
We would like to host them.
Yes, we want to host you, and if anytime you want to visit, you can come visit. And we did some really personal projects this year, the autobiographies, illustrated autobiographies, and we made some beautiful bags and made some shadow boxes, and every project was well done and very thought about. And what I thought is, if I could give you all some cake and ice cream, then you could enjoy while you listen to other people in the class who, and the cards, right? We did these cards.
And we had
Say what you liked in your cards.
more
Yeah. So, thank you. And so, really it's very personal when people are reading their stories. So if you could just enjoy, eat, and listen, that would be nice, because I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And if people don't want to share their whole book because it's too long, they don't have to share everything, but it'd be nice to hear a little bit from every book that got made.
All stories will be sweet with the cake.
Well, yeah, exactly, yes. Good job. All right, so that's, for now I'm going to serve, and then if,
This is your parents?
Yeah. With me in the middle.
Very nice.
And this one, you done?
Yeah.
And this one, this is my father.
Oh, handsome man.
Very handsome.
Movie star. He was an important man in the army, or they gave everybody? Okay, why don't you come up to the front and everybody could see you?
okay, I'll start from here.
You can, if you want, you can sit there, make it comfortable.
is. You're a comedian too. That's Sam's job. Let him make it.
From here.
Talk loud.
I was loud? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll start from here to give it a little, all right.
Background.
There was always drawing in my life. I majored in art since junior high. Drawing started before elementary school. Art was always there and was always my go-to. My go-to. Cartoons added words. Oh well, anyway, I love writing as well. And it goes over. Okay, here we go. We're getting into the Beatles now. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Okay. In junior high school, all right. The Beatles and my Beatle cartoons, majored in art. My art teacher couldn't believe this cartoon I did as a comic strip. But I know you, in other words, it was an entry. They were going to enter stuff as stuff in a contest. I did a comic book using, all the Beatles were in there, and John Lennon was doing an imitation of Ed Sullivan. And my teacher at the time, Mr. Rubin, he looked at it and said, "This is, you couldn't." I said, "I did." I says, "Listen, Gail, I know you did this, but they won't believe me. They won't believe you." Because it was a compliment. But at the same time, he didn't enter it in, But at the same time, it was, But what I did was I did a lot of Beatles stories, and then later on you saw it on TV and the movies and whatnot. I did a lot of that to amongst the other girls, because we got a little giggle out of it. It was fun, and I love drawing the Beatles anyway, so. It was a kick for me. So basically that's what it is. I still love to keep my hand in my art. I draw, I make jewelry, and as of late, I'm helping in art class by coaching people in the JASA Senior Center. I'm glad I can make people laugh, then I laugh, and then we all could laugh together. And then I drew my favorite little puppet again. My clown puppet. And that's basically,
Yeah, so laughter is the best medicine. So keep laughing.
But
Very
in middle school, well, I've been drawing since I've been in elementary school. I mean, even before that. But okay. Yeah, I just been drawing throughout school.
But,
I did it during class, like when I was bored.
you could show
nice
some of
drawing.
the pictures.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Show here because it looks great.
So this is when I was like in elementary school, this one year, and this is when I was in middle school. Like I had just moved to Georgia, and I didn't really know anybody.
It was a very nice drawing.
Yeah, very nice.
Absolutely lovely.
I just moved to Georgia and I didn't know anyone, so I kind of just kept to myself, and I was like drawing and stuff. And then like that's when other students saw me drawing, and that's how I started making friends and things like that. Is that the only part you wanted me to do?
Oh, that's great. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and you laugh.
From Kiev, from Ukraine, 31 years ago. And I used all these years. Yeah, all these years I used to work for different places, for attorney's office. I was a paralegal. Then I went to city job for an HRA as a caseworker. So make this story short. I really appreciate United States, who became my second, maybe the first now motherland, because I found myself here very comfortable, very confident, and care and that somebody cares about me. Even I help myself a lot. So, making it short, I came from working family. I'm so sorry. I had my sister, who unfortunately passed away, and having now 2 children, 5 grandkids. My children are doctor and teacher, and now my oldest granddaughter is graduated last year from Cornell University doing business school. So I'm very happy, I'm very proud, and I wish everybody peace and love.
Thank you so much. Good luck, you know.
Thank you.
The best of luck in your
East New York. When I was 4 years old, I moved with my parents and my sister to the Bronx. I lived in the Bronx for about, till I was 26 and a half. We used to very often take walks to the botanical gardens. I went to PS 46, Junior High School 115, Bronx High School of Science, and Hunter College in the Bronx, which has become Lehman College now. I majored in sociology, and when I graduated a couple of months later, I started my career as a caseworker in the Human Resources Administration for the City of New York. I worked in several different locations during the almost 34 years that I worked. First, I started off in the Division of Homemaking. Then I went to the BCW Division of Accountability. Then I went to the General Social Services in Bay Ridge and in Bensonhurst. And then I went to CASA 7, which was also providing home care services for people who were Medicaid eligible and needed the help. I helped them get on Medicaid, and I visited them and wrote up reports. But the nurses decided who would get the help and who not. And I worked there for very close to where I lived. It was right on West 8th Street between Neptune and Surf Avenue for the last 11 years of my career. And now I'm retired and enjoying it very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Mae Bernstein. I'm the daughter of Morris and Lillian Bernstein. We always lived in Brooklyn and moved every 2 years until I started school. Concessions were offered 2 months rent-free and a newly painted apartment. That's why we moved. My mother loved the fact that we were always getting painted. And my father, she would say, get the barrels. My father would put all the dishes in the barrels, and we moved. Okay. We settled in at 443 Alabama Avenue, right next to a synagogue, and across the street from PS 174, which my brother and I attended and graduated from. Being the tallest in every class, I was always at the back. I also became the announcer in the auditorium when important news had to be spread. Meanwhile, my brother was diagnosed with asthma and suffered numerous attacks. So every summer, my parents rented a bungalow in the Catskills for the clean mountain air. Every weekend, my dad would come and return to the city to work during the week. Before breakfast on Saturday morning, he and I walked about 2 miles. One time, we went up a different road where I learned about anti-Semitism. We saw a huge sign, no Jews, no dogs allowed, on the grounds of the Columbia Hill Hotel. I questioned my dad, who explained growing up in a small town, Vyshkova, in Poland, where Jews were persecuted. One day on his way home from school, his brother was beaten to death. We never went back to Hurleyville again. Okay? So much here, God. During the Jewish holidays, my paternal grandmother came to stay with her oldest daughter, my Aunt Molly, who lived around the corner from us on Georgia Avenue. This way, my grandmother was able to go to services as she lived too far from a temple. She wore a wig, a shaitel, every day. For the holidays, she had a special, and for special occasions, she had a special wig that she was a fancy one with waves. And I was absolutely amazed. Okay, when the holidays were over, she always gave me and her other grandchildren a shiny new quarter. When she passed away when I was 12, I was very sad for a very long time. I'm not going to tell you about this, about graduation. My first boyfriend. No, not really. We went our separate ways actually when we had a boyfriend when I was in junior high school. His name was Bernie Weber. And he was also relegated to the back of the room because he was tall. So. But of course, when we went to high school, we went to different schools. So we sort of drifted apart. Now, in high school, instead of graduating early, I got an academic diploma, but my parents suggested taking some commercial classes and graduate a little bit, with the rest of the people at my age. So I took stenography and typing for 2 years and got 100 on the region. I was the only one, so that was a very proud thing. I also took 6 months, which was one term of bookkeeping. I met my future husband at a New Year's Eve party to which my cousin invited me. I was 17. He was my date for the senior prom and my brother's bar mitzvah. Before going to Brooklyn College in the fall, I got a job in the summer in a 2-girl office on 44th Street and 6th Avenue, Zauder Brothers, which was a theatrical supply company catering to the Broadway actors. They had workers weaving wigs in the back rooms, and people sold their hair there, which was really interesting. They would come up with their hair in bags, and the people, they would weigh it, and they paid them.
They sold their hair.
They sold their hair.
Yeah.
And people were back.
And majoring in graphic design and illustration. I was born in Brooklyn. My mother was born in Italy and came here when she was 18. My father was born in Queens. I have one brother who's 25 and was born in Puerto Rico. From kindergarten to 8th grade, I went to Catholic school, and then after I graduated, I went to a public high school. Now I go to Kingsborough and will be graduating with an associate's degree in graphic design. Next fall, I will be in City Tech. My interests include basketball, music, bike riding, hanging out with my friends, and going to the beach.
Thank
Show
you.
us some of the pictures.
Oh, pictures.
Nice.
Great.
She used to draw nice. I mean, she draws nice.
Um,
Yeah, I remember this.
Jeanette, did you write something in your book? Remember? Maybe?
Okay.
103?
Whoa.
The sweet lady and I go back many, 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 many years. I followed her around wherever she went. Like the Trump, I was there. Here, I was there. Wherever she was, I was always behind her. We go back a long time. You're a darling, lovable, wonderful person. And everybody loves you, and I love you. What?
I remember when she was playing tennis.
All I can say is to my extended family, I'm probably the oldest one here, but up here, I'm like a child. I guess I'll never grow up here. And I come from a family of 5. We were poor people, but I was happy. I had peace of mind. When I went in the street, I looked behind me. I didn't get up in the middle of the night to make sure my door was closed. My neighbors were like my extended family. We're all young. We all got married during the war. So we all had children around the same time. And there was a Bialy bakery. So we would send our husbands down. You ever taste warm, fresh Bialys? If I tell you, just to say it's delicious is the understatement of the year. Do you hear me without this?
Yeah.
What was that?
When I was told I have a big mouth, they were right. so I don't need this. And as I say, my mother, God bless her, could be better. Her whole life was her children. My father, he went to school, he went to work, he went to sleep. But my mother, she was there, stayed up all night. Where did you go? What did you do? Who did you see? What are you wearing? Put on a coat, take off a coat. Could be better. Died at the age of 60. Such a young woman. I'm already 103.
Wow.
So I'm old. But my father, he was a sick one. He lived to be 70. My mother, who was a strong one, she died at the age of 60 in her sleep. That's how she died, in her sleep. Yeah, in her sleep. And my father, the genius, instead of calling the doctor, we lived 3 blocks away from each other. So he came running to me like I'm a doctor. By the time I got there, she already was gone.
Wow.
And I remember one of my neighbors, I hated her, the bastard. He said to me, your mother was a lucky woman. She didn't know what hit her. My mother died, but she was a lucky woman because she didn't know what hit her. So, as I say, I come from a family of 5. I'm the youngest one. I have 3 brothers. I used to fight with one of them who used to say I got a big mouth. I said the same thing he said. But when he said it, he didn't have a big mouth. But coming from me, I had a big mouth. But then when we grew up, he became my favorite brother. He was a good guy. We used to walk in the street holding hands, like we were boyfriend and girlfriend, not brother and sister. But they're all gone. I'm the only one left, which is, what's there to say? It stinks. What's there to say? You know, it's good. So, but I have 2 wonderful children.
Thank
And
you.
one of them has wonderful children. The other one has a cat. So that takes care of the one with the cat. But we're close. And I get my phone calls to find out if I'm still alive. And many times I would call and I would always greet them with, I'm checking in, I'm still here. But life is good.
Thank you.
I'm
She came with cupcakes, she came with cookies from a bakery.
Yeah, Diana, she always. Okay.
And she,
Thank you,
luckily,
Jeanette.
I know her
People
for
enough
already
with my
2
talk.
years, I think.
No, I wonder.
Yeah.
It's never enough.
She came from California to New York, and I'm so glad she did.
So I didn't write anything, but I can share a little bit, or a lot.
Wonderful woman. I can't hear you.
So I was born in Maryland. My parents met there as well. They met in a pizzeria where my father was very in love with my mother. So at some point, they moved into the city. They brought my father's brother, his mother-in-law, and my mom. My mom loved taking photos, so that's why there's so many photos of me. And this is what me and my father, I love bothering him. And I always told my father, one day I want to be just like you. So now I work with him every day. It's 15 years. But this is me. We moved to Brooklyn for a while, and then I went to Mexico. And I studied there for a couple years until I came back to the US. We moved around a lot. Delaware, Virginia, North Carolina. Then we landed in California where we stayed for a while until it was maybe my last year in high school. And my father asked me, he's like, you can come back whenever you want. And I said, New York? Of course.
Yeah, good.
And I've been here ever since. It's one of the best cities ever. Everything's easy and close. And this is the last photo I have. I actually hate taking pictures now because of how many photos they took of me when I was younger. We still have a lot more. We have a big box where they made me pose in every other way they could think of. And these are my other siblings in California.
Nice.
They're a little smaller, but.
And now you have a half brother here.
Yes, I have actually 3 more brothers here.
Oh wow.
Chocolate.
Chocolate.
Well, here's the pictures. The other side is the life.
Yeah. You want help? I can hold the mic.
Okay, that's okay, I got it. All right. So I was born on July 3rd, 1944, and my mother had 3 miscarriages before I was born. So by the time I was born, everybody referred to me as a blessing, a prize, a gift. My name was Frances, but everyone called me baby. And even as I graduated high school, in the family, people would say, and how was baby? And everybody, it was an older family. So anyway, I was born, we lived in Borough Park. The address was 828 47th Street. That's between 8th and 9th Avenue. It was the phone number, which I was thrilled that I remembered it.
Yes.
Getney 6 4473. My dad was married once before. He married my mother, and he had 2 children, Margaret and Anthony, and they are my half siblings. I went to St. Agatha Elementary School for 8 years. That's what they did in the parochial schools. Went to 8th grade. The public schools were I think 6, and then they went to junior high, junior high, and then high school. But when I finished 8 years of the nuns, because I was very outspoken, my father had died when I was 6 years old, and my mother, to encourage me to talk, believe it or not, I didn't, I wasn't Gabby as most little kids are. I went inward. And so she said, you could talk to God anytime. You just talk to him like you were on the phone. Well, the nuns took exception to that theory, and many times I was punished for having what they called audacity to think I could speak to the Lord just like I was on the phone. So to punish me, sometimes I had to sit in the garbage pail.
Oh my God.
Which was just a small wastebasket, but in those days I fit. and as I got older, they put me under the desk, and everyone's, So by the time I graduated St. Agatha School, I begged my mother, no more nuns, please. She wanted me to go to Catholic school. In fact, she wanted me to be a nun, which was like, what? But I think that you get a certain credit if you get a kid that goes into something religious anyway. So I went to high school. Now, I wanted to go to Fort Hamilton High School. Why? Because it's co-ed. But that wouldn't go over too well with my mother, who I used to call Sister Mary Margaret. But but I did, it to myself, God forbid. My father was a professional prize fighter, and I swear to God he must have taught her how to punch, because if I didn't, she didn't hit me, but once in a while I did get a smack in the back of the head, which felt like a punch. But many times I deserved it long before I got it. So I went instead. She permitted me to be enrolled in Bay Ridge High School, and in those days it was all girls. Now, I had a few interesting events happening in Bay Ridge, and one time, one of the other girls grabbed my feet underneath the stall, and anyway, I went home and I told my mother, and she said to me, Frances, you have to learn to get along with everybody. So that's how that, but all girls, they're not saints. I don't know why. I would have been better off at Fort Hamilton. I graduated Bay Ridge High School, and I went to Claremont Business School in Manhattan. I used to play the piano as a child, and so I really did a bang-up job of typing, because I had all that dexterity in the hands. But there was a disconnect between my ear, my brain, and my hand in taking stenography. And at that time, there was two kinds of stenography. There was Pittman and Gray.
Sure.
Bay Ridge High School and Claremont Business School taught Pittman. So, where Greg is a series of wavy lines, if I'm really simplifying it, and Pittman has, for the B letter, it was a bold slash, and for the P letter was a lighter slash. So it was almost like autistic. So I could type up a storm, but I couldn't do stenography. So what else was there to do? I got married. I mean, doesn't everyone get married when they can't take stenography? So, so I married for the first time in 1963, and there were family members, May, in 1963, and there were family members who were, their eyes knit together saying, May, they were counting on their fingers, but the baby wasn't born till March 25th, and I went, so that marriage lasted 4 years, and when you're 18 years old and you get married, do you think that, he kneeled down on one knee. At that time, Elvis was popular. He was a Southern boy. He said, "Will you consider being my missus?" Who talks to an 18-year-old from Brooklyn like that? I thought I was in love. So I said, "Of course I'll marry you. Tomorrow is good."
I have no class.
But of course, at 18, you think marriage means bedspread's gonna match the drapes. In the kitchen, all the dishes are gonna be the same pattern. You've got no idea about relationship and nurturing another person and all that. Anyway, so the baby was born on the 25th of March, and that marriage lasted 4 years, and it was very hard to be a single mother. There was no accolades for single parent households when I was a single parent. And so I went looking around for a guy to help me, to marry me, and support me, and help me raise my kid, and I would take care of him, knock his socks off. So that was the plan. So I meet this sailor who had this wonderful white uniform and was slender, and he talked in nautical terms. And it's another experience. Now, I'm, 4 years, from 18 to 20, I was still a baby. And so I was in love with the whole thing. Now, in my mind's eye, marrying a sailor meant we were going to go to, because he was in the Navy, he was only stationed here at Floyd Bennett Field temporarily while his ship was being something in dry dock. I don't know, they do things, whatever. In any event, I had in my mind, I would go to the different ports with him and have this life, a military life, and he not unfortunately, please, he came with 3 kids. His wife was in a mental institution. I never put those pieces together at the time, but his wife was in a mental institution, and again, I was in love. And so me and Lorraine would visit his children once a month. They were living upstate with his oldest brother, and I wanted to see if how my daughter was going to get along with his kids, because if she and they were going to fight, what's the use? So he had 3 children. James Christopher was born in 1962. Deborah was born in 1963. And Diana was born in 1964. My daughter Lorraine was born in 1964. So in effect, I had 4 kids with, all like little steps. And theoretically, it was going to be a wonderful time. We were going to travel, but he decided he wanted to retire from the Navy. So there goes that plan that we were going to. So Jimmy and the 3 kids came to live. Mama and I were with Lorraine, lived in a little house in Marine Park, and Jimmy and the 3 kids came and we all lived together. So we went from a family of 3 to a family of 7. And that went along very well. As I said, 62, 63, 64, because he would come home on leave, make this poor woman pregnant, and then go back to sea. His ship was based in France. She was a Georgia girl. She was too scared to travel with him. I would have had my bags packed permanently, but anyway, that's a difference. So anyway, I could see why she ran away from home. Can't we? Anyway, so that marriage lasted 13 years, and Jimmy Connors and I remained connected to one another, but we no longer were married. And by that time, the children, that was in 1984. So by that time, the baby that was, the youngest, his youngest was now 20, and then 21, and then the boy was 22. So I had raised them, but we were no longer married. And, but always connected.
Want to share it all?
Not easy for me. I made my living by talking.
Talk loud.
Short and sweet.
I used to do that. When I was teaching, I would move my lips to say nothing, and then I would call upon those who were not listening. And then they would try to say what I was asking. I'll make it a short presentation. I grew up on the Lower East Side in a building that was without elevators. A rickety truck pulled up in 1950 from Jamaica, Queens to the Lower East Side. We had seen the apartment earlier. The rent was $25 a month. My father and I, he always took me with him on the train. The trains were 10 cents and a dime, and we interviewed the landlord, so to speak, who lived in Brooklyn. The first of the month he would come for the rent on time. Today the person would be in danger of leaving with cash in his wallet and going back home. It was a railroad apartment that many people are familiar with. One room followed another. The law in 1906 said that every room must have a window. So windows were put into these old buildings, but sometimes the window would just face a wall, but it had a window. And you can look right into your neighbor's apartment because the buildings were sealed. They were connected in the front, connected in the rear, but in the middle there were air shafts that had to be put in to get some air coming into your apartment. We lived one floor above a bar and grill. I heard cursing when I was a child in Russian, Polish, Yiddish, English, because the sound would come through the floor, so to speak. They were made out of wood. The wood is a good conductor of sound. And my bedroom was really a living room as well. As you walked in, that was my bedroom. I was lucky to have that, and it had a couch that opened up in case someone came. So it was a living room and a bedroom. Then it was a dining room, and I was fortunate to have my own bathtub, three-piece bath room in the same apartment. Across the hall, some of the people had their bathtub in the kitchen. They had to step up on the stool to get in, sit down in the bathtub. If the family had a lot of girls, that means that the father and the brothers all had to be in a room with the door locked until everyone was finished with the bath. Not a stand-up shower. It took, some people like to stay. You were lucky to have hot water and steam. To save money, the boiler frequently broke down, so to speak. We all began doing something that was very common. We would bang on this radiator, metal radiator. It didn't bring the heat up, it just annoyed the super who happened to live at the lowest level near the boiler room. So the noise traveled, and I frequently say to people, especially out-of-town people, who are not familiar with this type of lifestyle, that we invented the first garbage disposal units on the Lower East Side. Wow, he says, you were ahead of your times. I said, yes, it was called the open window. Between the buildings, people threw garbage down. Some people lived on fancier buildings. There were no elevators. And a lot of the buildings were wired for direct current, DC current, not AC current. So right after World War II, the General Electric and all the other companies began to make everything for AC current. There was competition between Thomas Edison and Westinghouse and Tesla. They made direct current. If you go down South Street Seaport, I have a habit of reading signs on buildings. That's how I learned everything. I used to do walking tours with children. I would say, you live in a historic building. Look at the bricks. They're not just bricks. Oh, I see there's a pattern, there's a design. In other words, I made them aware. Streit's Matzos was 2 blocks away. Gus Studios, very famous photographer on the Lower East Side. Berner's Drugstore. We didn't call it a pharmacy. We called it a drugstore. Today we use the word pharmacy or apteca, but drugstore meant it sold medicines in those days, not what we have today. When I say I'm on medicines, I don't take drugs, people say, you're playing with the words, but that's okay. I stay away from stuff that I don't belong to touching. Raised on the first floor with loving parents. My mother, during World War II, lost 43 people during the Holocaust. Wow. My father's family survived in Russia, and they came to this country after the war. And those days coming into this country, I was told and I read what I have to teach was a job. You had to have a sponsor in this country. Otherwise, the government was afraid that you may, God forbid, ask the government for assistance. You had to be self-sufficient. So immediately he went to work for Trump family as a superior carpenter with all the certifications and everything. And he would come home and he would wanted me to join him on the job. I'll teach you everything about carpentry in the house. I said, no, Dad, I see how you come home from work. I don't want to have a life that difficult. He was exhausted when he used to come home from work. During the winter, there was no heat in the buildings. During the summer, there was no air conditioning in the buildings. So it was very hard work. But he was such a superior carpenter that Fred Trump would say to him, you're the only one I trust to do my model apartments or my apartments. In Madison Avenue sometimes, Park Avenue. He would give him the key and say, as long as it takes, you call me when you're finished. We'll send someone to get the key. So I had this dream. I went to Baruch College, graduated with a degree in finance. Paul Newman had made a movie that he was a stockbroker. I was very impressed with that movie. I think it was A View from the Bridge. He was so well dressed. I wanted to go down to Wall Street. Everywhere I went, the same question. Are you finished with military service? This was just the beginning of the Vietnam War, where the South Vietnamese would be paid on Wednesday, and by Thursday they would leave without absence. They would run away. You couldn't tell the North Vietnamese enemy from the South. They were the same people. It was a civil war. And then the United States got more involved. And Westmoreland asked for more soldiers. Johnson sent in more soldiers, but we couldn't defeat the enemy so easily. The enemy used the jungles, everything. We even used Agent Orange, for those of you who are not familiar. It took away the leaves from the trees, but also caused a lot of people to have cancers later. And I would sit in the Veterans Hospital, and people would sit and they would agitate and move back and front. I didn't have to ask. I knew. They would tell me. I still have the effects of it. I still have the, and I believed them. I felt for them. Because it's not something that was meant for human nature. As a matter of fact, the Admiral's son, Zumwalt, his own son, died from Agent Orange. And the government didn't want to give any compensation. It took a while to convince the government to do something to the veterans that suffered these type of problems. To make it short, while I was in the Army, a commanding officer said, I see you have special talents. One is that you know how to type. You're a very good typist that we desperately need. The Army has a tendency to take a cook and teach him to become a typist. They typist and teach him to become a truck driver. You know, there's the right way, the wrong way, and the Army way. Sometimes you cannot understand the logic, but that's how they work. I entered. When I came out, I went back to school 4 nights a week. And the commanding officer says, you also are able to teach people, but you don't shout at them, they listen to you, you have patience. I had patience without being a doctor in those days. I have to get a little thing in. And he says, you should consider teaching. Somehow I listened to him. Came back, went to school, went back to City College uptown, went to NYU for another degree, and got a teaching, taught for many years. I was an assistant principal for many years, 6 months acting principal of a big junior high school. My mother became a crime victim at age 85. I was the only living soul around to help her, so I retired, too young to retire, and I helped her for 3 years until she passed away. But people said, you come 6 days a week to nursing home. I said, I'm only returning a small percentage what she did for me. I want to, I'm able, she needs me, and I need to help her as well. So her up. And she says, Grandpa, you wouldn't believe all those things that you did with us, like the skills came to us. And sewing up was no big thing. The school taught us something, but you showed me how to do this and that. So it's my legacy, so to speak, to my grandkids. They all say the same thing. We are very confident what we do with our hands and think because of all the things that you did with us. And but you allowed us to make decisions when we did something. The rose didn't have to be red. In other words, I would say, they come in different colors, you choose the color. So, and they say, you gave us options, different things to do. So I'm always, as I say to people, I'm happy to be here. At my age, I'm happy to be anywhere, right? And with a pleasant group of people, I've learned a lot from everyone. I frequently sit next to Jeanette, and I watch her artwork, and I am impressed. I wish I would have that thing. And other people, Gail, who was very artistic, frequently I would lean over and see what she was drawing, and a few other people. You learn. If your mind is open, you're willing to learn from everyone. It's better to know and not use than when you have to know it, not know it, not have it. So it was a thing. So I wish my physical condition were better, but when I come here on Fridays, it's a good an hour and a half, better than staying home. And with nice people around me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so
So,
much.
just to tie it all up, unless Sarah wants to say anything? No, okay.
The cookie.
In the science section
Yes.
was how the arts can benefit your mental health. So in case you didn't know, and you often said this, it's called recreational therapy.
That's right, they charge you if you go into a hospital and they put you in a ward for mental issues. If someone like Madeline stands there with 4 people, Medicare, what do you call it, gets paid a substantial amount of money charged against you for art therapy. That's what they call it.
All I can say is we've all made each other happy, and I'm very happy about that. So thank you.
Yeah. We'll see you in July. Thank you, lady. We remember. Look, we were talking about.
Yes.